There may be nothing more personal than managing one's money. I called our resource partner, Sean Sorensen at Prosper Healthcare Lending, and asked him who he thought was the finest financial planner he knew. When he suggested my longtime friend, Scott Marsh, I wasn't surprised. Scott teaches at the BYU Marriott School of Management. He's an accomplished author and consultant, and I personally want to copy his genius when he talks to us today on his chosen topic, More Money Than You'll Ever Need. With the gracious help and support of Prosper Healthcare Lending, let's have a crown conversation with Scott Marsh.
I appreciate this opportunity of being here. I have to tell you something. I just deeply kind of enjoyed the spirit and enthusiasm of people as I was coming in, but I had a bit of a paradigm shift. I had one of the doctors back here talking, I suppose, to one of his hygienists, and she said, so far, what have they talked about? And he said, well, they talked about relationships, they talked about social media, and they're going to talk about money. And she actually looked at him and said, do I have to go to the one about money? And I have to tell you about an experience I had one time when we were doing an educational workshop where people actually had a choice of which workshop they wanted to go to. Into my room ran a little girl that said, you know, the one I really wanted to go to across the hall is all filled up, but can I come to yours? And I paused long enough to let her know that's not the way you introduce yourself to the guy that's teaching the class. And I said, does that mean I wasn't your first choice? And she says, I didn't mean it that way. I said, oh, just sit down. But that night, I've just enjoyed so much Sister Heck and what she's talking about. And I said, you know, I went home to my wife and I told her what had happened and asked her if that should have concerned me at all. She looked at me in the most positive way she could and said, shouldn't have concerned you one bit, honey. You weren't my first choice either. Now, I want you to know, Miss Heck, that she was looking right at me. She was filling my emotional bank account. And I'm here today because we've now been married for 33 years, and I love her dearly. I just have to tell you how much this is kind of a fun experience. I hope you'll kind of, and I share that story with you too for this reason. There's a lot of people, now he just introduced this by saying this is what causes most people stress. Why does it cause people so much stress? Let me see if I can kind of fill a bank account with some possibilities that I think you might find very fascinating. First of all, I want you to know that there is a possibility that some of the things we do each day could make it so that we could be a lot more successful and enjoy the kinds of joys I hope that would come from this possibility of, or this process of managing money wisely. So let's see how many paradigms. We've done a lot of research. We've been doing this for a number of years now, and I hope that somehow I can help you with it a little bit. And let me just start with it this way. When I was 8 years old, this all started really. I was 8 years old, and I asked my mother one day if I could go swimming. And my mother told me that I couldn't go. And I did what I shouldn't have, of course, done, and I went swimming anyway. And let me just tell you what happened. My 13-year-old brother found out that I had gone swimming, came down, and said, I'm going to tell Mom. Now, you have to know what kind of purgatory that sends you to for my mother to know that I'd done something that was very disobedient. So I just said, look, is there some way you can not tell her that? So he looked at me, he made the following deal. He said, I'll tell you what, I won't tell Mom as long as you promise to give me 10 cents each week for the rest of your life. Anybody else have a brother or sister just like that? Just filled my bank account. It was the coolest thing. Well, I want you to know that I'm just going to kind of give you some paradigms today I want you to write down. These are the positive things I want you to know. I actually, for myself, tried to figure out how much that would be worth. You see, I'm a financial guy. I quantify everything. The first thing I'm going to teach you today that you probably didn't know, that you all came here and it's well worth the price of admission, I'm going to teach you the exact day you're going to die. So see, I had to know how long I'm going to be paying them this 10 cents. There's a website that you can go to called deathclock.com. And at deathclock.com, you answer about 5 questions. And once you're through answering those questions, it will tell you the exact day you're going to die. Now, one of the things that they ask you when you do that is they say, tell us a little bit about your emotional outlook. You tell me which of these 4 categories you fit into. The first is you're optimistic. The second one is you're about normal. These are the examples. These are the ones that they'll give you once you get there. The third is you're pessimistic, and the fourth is you're sadistic. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm optimistic beyond any reason. So of course I typed in optimistic, and when I typed that in, I want you to know that it told me that my death date was July 3rd, 2052. And if you don't think that's important, my kids have that date circled on their calendars. They're looking forward to it with some enthusiasm. But I'm going to give you something that I thought was actually a real positive that came from it. I went back and I said, look, I typed in positive. I typed in I'm delusionally optimistic. And so they didn't have a category for that. But I went back and I said, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that I'm normal. So I went back and just changed it. How would that impact my life if I just typed in normal? So instead of optimistic, I typed in normal. And this is a true story. It knocked 25 years off from my life. Instead of being dead by 2052, it said by 2027, you're gone. What do you think? 25 years by so that's the first paradigm you write down, attitude. Now, here's the second one. I then went back and I typed in, so what if you're a pessimistic person? Now, I'm not embellishing this a bit. If I was pessimistic, it knocked another 19 years off my life, but look at the date that I was going to die. And in fact, a little box popped up and said, I'm sorry, your time has expired, but have a nice day. Now, I don't know how about you, but I'm already into emotional bank account. They're really feeding me well. I went back and typed in sadistic. I showed you that. But let me just give you another good thing that could happen to you. So instead of living for a long time like that, Time Magazine just a couple of years ago did a research project, and they did a cover story that basically said this: by the year 2045, you're going to be immortal. Write that down. You're going to live a lot longer than you thought you were going to live. That's kind of an important factor to start off with in this, because a lot of times when you've gone to your financial advisors before, they've said, so when you retire, how many years do you think you're going to live? And they base your retirement plan based on how many years you're going to live. Now let's just change that paradigm and say you're going to live forever if you can make it to 2045. So raise your hand if you got 45 more years to live. Everyone in the, well, okay, obviously if somebody's got terminal athlete's foot or something like that, you might not make it, but basically, you got 45 more years to live. Let's see if we can fill it up the way that we'd like to fill it up. I took that 10 cents. I said, if I'm going to do that for the rest of my life, based upon that 91 years that they gave me at the time, I said, that means that each week, that means I got 4,732 weeks that I'm going to give him that money. If I then compounded that at a reasonable rate of interest, it showed me that I would, by the time I passed away, that promise that I made to him that day was worth $1,040,000. I call that $1 million choice. And I want you to know something. As my brother made that commitment, and I didn't know anything about hush money. I was 8 years old. I didn't know anything about bribery. I didn't know anything about the witness protection program. But so I felt violated. But can I just tell you this? As he said that, I literally stood there and thought, wow, income for the rest of your life, and you don't have to do anything else. You just let it happen inside of an investment account. That just fascinated me as a little 8-year-old boy. So it helped me to do this with $1 million choices. Can I just tell you this? And that's what we've come up with today, and what I'd like to talk with you a little bit about are choices that you're making every single day. If we can somehow impact those choices in just a little different way, if we can somehow make even some fine-tuning shifts in those, sometimes it's not even so much things that you have. I had a little girl in class the other day that just said, man, I calculated it. She was very excited about it. This only happened a couple of days ago. She said, after she'd heard this little principle, she said, I went home and calculated that I eat $250 in ice cream every single year. And she said, if I just quit eating ice cream, I found that will make it so that I could have an extra $2 million in my 401k by the time I retire. And I grimaced and I said, ice cream. I don't know how many people are going to want to give up ice cream. So let's see if we can talk about some things that you might find a little more palatable than doing that. So I just asked this question. Here's a fundamental question I want you, because it's just kind of a nice quantified way to approach this process. If I wanted to increase my net worth over the rest of my life, now remember, you're all going to live for 45 years, so this is based upon that kind of a portfolio, that kind of a premise. If I want to increase my net worth by $1 million over my life, what do I have to do? And I'm going to give you two basic types of accounts that you can put money in during that period of time. The first is a 401k. Most of you either have a 401k or you're familiar with it. If it's not a 401k, it can be an IRA or something like that, preferably 401k if possible. If it's in a 401k account, the other one is just if it's in any other kind of an account. I'm just going to tell you this. If I could find something that you could change, some way you could approach the expenses that you incur on an ongoing basis, if I can change those expenses in a 401k, if an investment in a 401k, I'd need to find $15 a month in extra resources that I can contribute to my 401k. That's kind of cool. I want you to think about that for a second. Just imagine, so a small amount, it's a relatively small amount, $15. If I could do $15 a month more to my 401k over the time that I will continue to work and over the period of time that we're talking about, you'd make $1 million difference in your future. In a regular account, so you don't have all the tax savings and maybe the matching contributions and that kind of stuff, the number is $40. And I'm going to work on that number as we begin to tell you what the future just may look like. Some of you may have been subjected, and unfortunately there's a lot of voices out there right now, a lot of very negative, very angry, very extreme, kind of fearful voices that are trying to convince you or persuade you to believe that the American dream is dead and that somehow things are going wrong in some major way. I'm here to tell you a book that I'll recommend to any of you. It's called Abundance. It's written by Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler. The book Abundance, if you'll see the other part of it, just fundamentally says the future is better than you think. And I want you to consider this fundamental quote as you consider for yourself, what will the future look like? This is what Peter Diamandis said. If it will bring it up, I'm sure it will. I think it might have just gone dead on us. Is there some way to, maybe I might have hit the wrong button. I hope I didn't. If there's some way to get it back up, I'll just summarize it. I want you to know I do this enough. I could almost give this without the presentation, so if there's some way they can put it back up, that'd be great. Just know that in this book, he fundamentally says this. He says the future's a lot better than you think it's going to be. He said, actually, the time will come within one generation. Now imagine this. Now say you got to have a little bit greater vision now because I don't have my PowerPoint. I'll just say this. He said that within one generation, we'll be providing to the poorest of poor things that are available only today to the wealthiest of wealthy people on this earth. Because of the innovations, because of the technologies, because of the research, and because of the possibilities that are being generated. So there's your quote. So within a generation, we'll be able to provide goods and services once reserved for the wealthy few to any and all who need them. Now imagine if that's possible. Just to kind of have a little imagination and see if you can imagine this. He said, imagine a world of 9 billion people with clean water, nutritious food, affordable housing, personalized education, top-tier medical care, and non-polluting ubiquitous energy. I just think that's some possibilities that we can look forward to and say, whew, our students at the Brigham Young University regularly do research on what we call the top 10 innovations that will change your life the most in the next 10 years. So these cannot just be kind of intergalactic things that might happen 300 years from now. These are things that are actually taking place right now that will have a dramatic impact not only on you, but on your personal prosperity and upon the way you spend those resources. Let's see if we can use them very wisely. And again, it cut out. I don't know why it keeps doing that. I keep pushing the right button. I don't know what we can do with it. So I'll just now. So what I want to do is I'll start off with this whole concept of $1 million choices and find out if somehow we can build for you a platform where it starts to make some sense for you, where you can somehow begin to realize some values that can come from things that you can actually do right now. And I'm going to build a few of them. If they get it back up, they've got one of the screens back up here, so I can at least show you this, or at least I can tell you this. At the Brigham Young University, we've been doing research for some years. I've been there now since 1990. And as we've conducted this research, we've developed this thing called the science of personal prosperity. And in the science, they don't have it up on that screen, but it's got it up on this one right here. There it goes. So the science of personal prosperity fundamentally says this. There are 3 intelligences that we have to have in order to fundamentally accomplish the objective in the most efficient way. The first is behavioral intelligence, which we'll talk more about today. The second is financial intelligence, and the third is community intelligence. I'm only going to, for today, suggest this one thing that we've always presented to them, and that's this simple formula. If there's some things that you can do that will make this process happen. Because of our relative lack of time, I'm going to spend most of our time focused on 2 different ones. Number one, this process of finding some way to put 10% of your income into a 401k account. The second one is making these $1 million choices that we talked about. Why do I talk about 401ks? 401k can be a very healthy kind of a thing because I'll just tell you this. For the vast majority of all people, it's the largest single liquid investment that you'll ever have in your lifetime. So you get to retirement, or you get to that point in time where you just like to start living off your resources. Can I just suggest in a very positive and a very open way that that's the one that's going to be the very largest amount? I can't tell you how many people will come to me and say, I'm ready to retire. And I'll say, great, tell me what you have. I got a home, and I got a 401k. I've been working for a company for 40 years, and I got a 401k worth $600,000. I ask them what else they have, and they just look at me and smile. They don't really know something else. I did have one guy one time tell me, I think my wife's worth $1 million. Now that guy knew how to fill an emotional bank account. She was sitting right there, so I'm sure it helped him a great deal. There's a couple of reasons why these 401ks work so well. Number one, the behavioral intelligence of a 401k works because it's pulled out of your paycheck before you see it. It's because there's a substantial penalty for early withdrawal. It's because someone else does all the work, which is tremendous. The financial reasons why they work so well are because of all the multipliers and matches that are within that 401k. Let me just show you a little bit more about what we've done at BYU to somehow bring those to people. There's a website, scottmarsh.com, and at that website, I hope you can see that we've done a lot of $1 million choices. We've given $1 million choices not only for individuals, but also business owners, and we even did some for college students. But what I'd like to do is talk just quickly today and see if I can share with you fast enough something that we refer to as multi-million-dollar choices, and I'll show you where we came up with that idea or where we came up with that topic. We literally took Department of Labor statistics on the way people spend their money today. We took the top 7 ways that people spend their money, and we said if there's some way that we can make that spending of resources more efficient, is there some way that then you could not just make a choice that might make your bank account worth more than $1 million, make $1 million, it would make it worth more than $1 million. So in that, there's a couple of them that we came up with, and I'm going to share just a few of them with you real quickly. The fortune in food works like this. The average family in America today spends about $720 a month on food. You might spend more, you might spend less. If you eat out a lot, then obviously it's going to cost you more. If you eat ramen noodles and rocks, then probably you're not spending quite that same amount of money. But let me just tell you, the average family in America today spends about $720 a month on food. What if we did this fundamental thing, and I can't tell you about the whole thing right now because of our lack of the time that I get for this. On this meal planning plan, basically you plan in advance, you plan what it is you're going to feed, then you purchase things in advance, that kind of thing. There are a number of major institutions that have come up with this same research to show that you'll save about 50% on a food budget on a monthly basis by doing that. I want you to know that our students at the Brigham Young University have actually created 21 different meal plans. We've actually had them go out and create the different recipes, pull the recipes into a program, find out what they'd have to shop for. They went out to shop for it. They've actually passed it through the nutrition department to make sure that it's nutritionally healthy. So it might be different. It might be one plan for somebody that needs low sodium, one that's low gluten, one that's I want to only spend 30 minutes preparing each meal, one that's because I got some kids and I want to make sure that it's kid-friendly type plans. We want to make sure that they're all as healthy and as good as possible. They created the meal plans, and I will tell you this, in every single case, there was more than a 50% savings when they went out to do that. I don't know that anyone here can actually understand and anticipate just how much of a difference that will make if you plan in advance and make sure you do it in a wise way like that. So let's just do this. Let's, instead of saying that's going to save you 50%, let's be a little more conservative so that you feel like somehow it's something that you can imagine in your own mind. What if you only save 25%? That's $180 a month. I want you to take that $180 for a second, go back to that little screen that we had that showed how much you'd have to put into your 401k each month in order to make it worth $1 million. In that case, in a 401k, it was only $15 a month. In a regular investment account, it was $40 a month. So I just take that $180 that I'm saving, I divide it by the 15 for how much I'm putting in, and how much would that mean that your 401k will be worth when you retire, when you're done with this process, if you make that shift? That's what we call a multi-million-dollar choice. That's a $12 million difference in a net worth. What if I did it in a regular investment account? In the regular investment account, I just divide it by 40 and do the exact same thing. That's $4.5 million. Okay, so tonight, have one of those emotional bank account conversations with your partner and say, okay, 4.5 million, keep eating the same way we're eating right now. What do you think? what might happen in that conversation. Let's go to a couple more real quickly. We'll keep track of them fast so that there's no, some might enjoy some. What I've done here is I've actually combined two of them together. There's a lot of things that our students have come up with, and they're all on the website so that you can all go there and find them out. But here's one that I'm just going to point out to you that came up by the Federal Highway Commission, where they started something called the Livability Initiative. And they took two things, what you're spending on your housing and what you're spending on your transportation getting to and from work every day. And they just simply said this, if you'd live, and that's all based on if you'd live closer to where you work, where you recreate, where you go to school, where you go shopping, where you go to church, whatever else those things are. They said if you just live a little bit closer, they calculated the average American today is spending 25% of their take-home pay on their transportation. And that 25% could be reduced down to 9%. Now, this is the Federal Highway Commission, and so you can decide for yourself how credible it is. We figured by the budget that we're talking about, if you did that exact same thing with your transportation, with the living efficiency plan that they're talking about, and I'm giving you the website at the bottom of there so you can see exactly where to go to find that information, we figured that you'd be saving $210 a month. If I'm saving $210 and I go back to the exact same formulas and I just decide for myself I'm going to follow their guidelines, I'm going to do what they've suggested that I do, I'm going to see if I can, and I take whatever it is that I've saved and I now invest that in a 401k account. By the time you've been through that process, it'll make a $14 million difference. In your regular investment account, if we divided that by $40, it'd make a $5.25 million difference. Now, the old day, we used to have a day when it was kind of fun to live in the suburbs where you have a bigger house, but you have an hour-long commute to work every single day. I will tell you, not only from a financial standpoint, but the research will suggest from a behavioral and an emotional and a relationship standpoint, your relationships are actually harmed by those long commutes to and from work. So it's only another idea. So far we've been through food, we've been through where you live, and I just wanted to kind of throw in here as a different possibility. I don't know how many of you are familiar with all of the driverless vehicle initiatives that are taking place today. These are actual vehicles. These are not just prototypes. These are being created. The day will quickly come when you pull out your smartphone. When it comes to how much it costs for a vehicle, you'll pull out your smartphone, you'll touch a button, it'll say, I'd like to have a vehicle. The vehicle will show up. It won't have a driver in it, but you'll get in it and you just tell it where you want to go. You only pay for that vehicle while you're traveling. Can I tell you this, that the estimates are that you'll save 80% of what you're currently spending on automobile expenses will be saved once those vehicles happen like that. Because right now, what's happening is you're buying a car. How long does that car sit in your driveway? The average person only drives a car 1 out of the 24 hours that you own it. What will happen to vehicles when those vehicles are moving all day long and you're only paying for it during the time? So just know that there's some other things that will happen along with this. And we, of course, document all these things on our website so that you can see what will happen. And I will just tell you that this is stuff, there are literally automakers that suggest by next year they're going to have driverless vehicles that you can purchase and use. And so there's obviously some really neat possibilities. They're not only available today, but things that can happen in the future as you wisely plan and as you anticipate, as you're primed for some of these changes that will take place with your health, with the way that you manage your health. The Harvard Medical School just said this, if 75%, this was the Harvard Medical School, I'll show you the research so you can decide for yourself. They said 75% of all major medical expenses in the world today would be stopped if we do 3 things. Guess what those 3 things were? Number 1 was get regular medical examinations. Number 2 is to establish a risk profile. Do you know what that is? That might be just doing a DNA test or doing some other kind of a test to establish what things you're most at risk for, and then to take the steps that are necessary to minimize those risks. As you take steps that are necessary to minimize those risks, and you understand why that can be so helpful, let's just say this. Look, you're not going to save 75%. The average family in America today spends $1,600 on medical expenses on a monthly basis, and that's actually a pretty conservative guess. $1,600 a month. Let's not save 75% of it. Let's just save 15%. What do you think? Is that something a little more realistic that you can handle? 15% of $1,600 is $240 a month. Once again, I do those exact same numbers. In my 401k, that'll turn it into a difference of $16 million. And outside of my 401k, it'll turn into $6 million. I hope you're kind of getting kind of primed to understand that this is something so much more than what you might have imagined you have the potential of doing, and how much control you have over the way you end up and the way you enjoy personal finance. I will tell you this once again, I kind of threw this other thing into it that just talks about the reality that the medical world is changing so dramatically right now, and it's giving us opportunities to accomplish a lot of the things that in the past might have made it so that it was very difficult for you to do it. The next one I'm going to talk about is one, just so you'll know that we're not going to just talk about ones that you could do. I'm going to talk about one that's already happened and see what you did with it. There was some research done on gasoline in America today by this group Fuel Mix. It's just kind of an advisory group. They said that over the last year, the average household in America has saved $100 a month on gasoline. So as you've driven to and from work or wherever you go, if you're the average, this is the average that they're saying you've saved $100 a month. Let me just ask you this fundamental question. What did you do with that $100? So you've had an extra $100. If you'd have been to our website, so as we track these changes as they're taking place and then make recommendations, if you just took that $100, this is take the $100, and this is $100 that you've saved based upon what? Not based upon discipline and foresight and hard work and not eating ice cream. This is something that took place just because technology and innovation is changing so rapidly. With that $100, once again, we put it through our formula. If you'd have put that in your 401k, it would have made a $6.6 million difference in your future. If you put it in any other kind of an investment account, that one simple shift would have made a $2.5 million in your investment future. Would it have been worth it to know that and do something with it? Now, just so that you'll know, we just kind of make sure that we've got it all in place for you. I will just suggest that there's a lot of other very large multi-million-dollar choices, but I want to introduce you to one that I think Laura, our last guest, suggested that she enjoys flatulence. I mean, I don't know that I don't know if she's still here, but there's something about the process of sharing that with others that makes her happy. So I want to give her one that I think that she could even implement if she'd like to. This is one that our students did at BYU. That is just a simple one. Now, this is a simple one that everyone has the opportunity to engage in. We compared the price of somebody that goes and buys Gas-X from Costco. So this is the least expensive place that you can buy Gas-X. Our students since compared that price with buying the exact same thing in a generic brand. And as they bought that in a generic brand, they calculated that the annual savings that they had realized is about $35. If it's $35 that they'll save over a year, what does that make it on a monthly basis? That makes it about $3 a month. And so $3 a month doesn't sound like a great $1 million choice, does it? But if you actually took that and put it inside your 401k, we worked through the exact same numbers we just put it through, that would make a $200,000 difference in your future if you decided today that instead of buying the name brand, you bought the generic brand. That would make a $200,000. Now, how many of you had a $200,000 impact on your future just yesterday in something that you did? We kind of envision a day, and we're creating right now a $1 million choice app where people can share what kind of a day they had. Now when you get home from work, instead of having one of those touchy-feely conversations about how do you love me and whether you think this is going to work, you can now have a conversation and say, I had a $200,000 day today, or I had a $70,000 day today, by making some fairly small choices. And so I'll just have to tell you this. We, through our research, have found that the average consumer in America today purchases about 300 products per year. So whatever it is, and we found, the fortunate thing is we found that 80% of those projects are purchased on a recurring basis. So it's something just like Gas-X, or just like anything else that you purchase on an ongoing, you actually spend that money on a regular basis on something. So if you're able to set it up with something like we've talked about, where you can actually put it on a monthly basis, you can put those contributions in, you can see what kind of, and we believe that every single one of those things you purchase could turn into a tremendous $1 million choice if you just took the time to do a little analysis that we're going to help you to do as part of our website. Our students at the Brigham Young University, through our $1 million choices, have researched over 3,000 different products, and all the information is there that's necessary for you to make just simple decisions, and I hope have the kind of days at work that make it so that when you come home at night, well, no matter whatever else happened that day, as you made a great choice and then contributed that to your 401k, it obviously can make a gigantic difference in your future. I will tell you that all of those were based on one of two things. That's either you making a great choice based on the things that you're spending, or it was based on innovation changing in such a way that you were primed for and you actually were ready to engage, so that the time that took place, you were able to say, for our students, and just there's a number of different ideas, and we just come. I can't obviously take the time with every single one of them, but each one of them provide an opportunity for you to engage this process in a way that can be very helpful to your future. One of the ones that we love to recommend is one that is available on a lot of 401ks today, or some other kind of a savings plan that you might have. On 401ks, it's common for the employer to make it so that you can just automatically have your contribution increase by 1% per year. And I will just tell you this, when that's offered, and so you're only making a decision about a future expense, we find that the vast majority of employees that's offered to will elect that, and it will just automatically take place. You don't have to think about it. It's not something that will take a lot of time or energy on your part to do. That's one of the greatest things about that process is I just want you to know this is something that most of the work can be delegated to someone else when it comes to a 401k. We contrast that with losing weight and how difficult it is to lose weight. You can't delegate losing weight to someone else. I can't say to you, I'll pay you $20,000 to lose 40 pounds for me. But when it comes to engaging the 401k, you make a phone call, you get it all set up, and you start that process of making those contributions, and those contributions will just take place for you on a regular basis without you having to spending a lot of time with it. Can I just tell you this? One of the things that I think makes a 401k difficult for people is that those that are involved with owning the business oftentimes wonder if it's worth the price that's associated with setting one up. Can I just assure you that number one, it can be done, a 401k on a free basis. And here's something great for the doctors. If you haven't looked recently into what we refer to as a defined benefit pension plan, there are ways now that you can do that without the risk that it took in the past. I have a number of doctor clients that are actually contributing as much as $300,000 a year to the combination of those plans and deducting the whole thing for tax purposes. You for yourself can understand what kind of benefit can be derived from a tax standpoint by just taking a little extra time, spending a little extra, taking a little more energy, making sure that it's something that can not only benefit your employees, but can benefit you. So that $300,000 for the doctor and for your highest paid hygienist, $300,000 for the highest paid hygienist will obviously create wonderful benefits for you. So I'll just tell you this kind of in closing. The book that we already talked about, Abundance, talks about what I'd refer to as exponential innovations. Can I recommend it to any one of you? I just think that as you read it and you understand what kinds of things can take place and will take place and are already taking place, I'd love to just take the time to talk about some of those innovations, but we're obviously somewhat limited. So Abundance talks about what those innovations are. They just recently completed a book called Bold, which is a follow-up to the same thing, which makes it so that how do entrepreneurs, how do business owners, how do they take those exact same innovations, those exponential innovations, and make those innovations possible for their businesses, and so that they, through those wonderful innovations, can make great things happen. And I'll just tell you, on our website, we're dedicated to a little bit different thing. We're dedicated to the individual. And we're saying, how can you take innovations? How can you make it so that the things that you engage, that you can be primed for, that you can watch to take place, how can you make sure that you can take those and by anticipating those to generate great abundance and prosperity? I can only suggest this, and I'll just kind of finish by telling you that I speak at a lot of different groups. And what this process is all designed for is to hopefully create some kind of happiness in your life. What's the happiest income in America today? Do any of you know? There is some great research done by Daniel Gilbert at the Harvard University. And in that research, he just asked that fundamental question. They did all sorts of research among people from many different levels of life. And we have a lot of confidence in the number that he came up with because he first reported it on the Oprah Winfrey Show. What was it? What's the happiest income in America today? He reported that it's $40,000 a year. Now you know why they've asked me to come here to speak to you. I'm telling all of you the happiest income in America today is only $40,000. Anything over that amount will not make you any happier. And the dentist wanted you all to know that. I'm just kidding. I want you to know that there was some research that was being conducted at the Yale University at the same time where they gave what I would refer to as a little bit more academically kind of anticipated or expected result. They said that the happiest income in America today is an income that's slightly higher than your nearest neighbor or your closest relative. So what I want you to do is all write down your income on a piece of paper and show it to the person next to you so you can know today whether you're going to be happy or not, because If you're doing better, see, you're all sitting together as hygienists, aren't you? Go ahead right now, write down your income and show it to the person. No, I'm just kidding you. You don't want to do something like that. Here's the one most important thing that I want to share for you. The reality is this. We're now in 2016. We're at the beginning of 2016. Can I share with you in the strongest and most enthusiastic way I possibly can that you've never, ever been more in control of a future that's ever been better? I can tell you with more enthusiasm than any that could possibly suggest with all the research that we've done, as you make great choices, as you anticipate these dynamic new innovations that are coming along, as you for yourself decide today that indeed the future can be bright, especially as you engage and as you discipline yourself to recognize the benefits that can come from it, I think it will not only create for you the kind of resources you'd like, but I think in many instances you'll find that from a time management, from an emotional management, and from a personal relationship management standpoint, these will be great blessings to you in your life. I've been delighted to have the opportunity to share it with you, and I hope that it has some benefit to you. Thank you very much.